It was Friday afternoon, November 22nd, 1963, when the president's motorcade came down this street, and just about the spot where I'm standing, a fatal shot hit the president in the right temple. Some believe that shot came from right here at the grassy knoll, right behind the picket fence. At the moment of the assassination, a 6'7" gentleman by the name of Orville Nix happened to be filming from this location. Strangely, all the spectators ran toward the grassy knoll. Why would they do that? Why not run toward the school book depository, where supposedly Oswald fired the fatal shot from the 6th floor window? Maybe it's because what was captured on Abraham Zapruder's film showed that the shot that killed the president could have only come from here, behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll. You say, well, what does this have to do with acting? Well, in addition to being a historic landmark, it's also a movie set. Oliver Stone's JFK, Time Quest, the trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, all done right here at Dealey Plaza. And not to mention all of the documentaries over the years, dozens and dozens of them. So which one was it? Did the shot that killed the president come from over here at the picket fence on the grassy knoll? Or was it from the former school book depository 6th floor window, lone gunman by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald? Joining me now is probably one of the greatest historians of the assassination of President Kennedy, Robert Groden. Robert, how many years have you been researching this?
Almost 48 years. The president was shot on my 18th birthday, and I'm going to be 66 this week, so...
So let me ask you, where did the shot come from that killed the president?
Well, the fatal shot came from the right front, from behind the stockade fence on the grassy knoll. There's no question about that. The witnesses said it, the medical evidence shows it, the films show it. There's no question. The question is how many other spots where there were shots were fired from.
As far as the bullet from the 6th floor window being fired, who do you think that was?
We don't know. I'm willing to accept the fact that at least 1 or 2 shots did come from there, or at least that general direction. But which ones hit and which ones didn't, we don't know, because the autopsy was so terribly botched. We know that a bullet went into the president's back, only went in 1.5 to 2 inches and never traversed the body. Didn't even go into the pleural cavity, and it was removed during the autopsy. We have the receipt, but not the bullet.
So then the magic bullet, the pristine bullet, is a bunch of bunk.
Oh yeah, it's a lie, it's a fairy tale.
What role do you think that Lee Harvey Oswald played in the assassination of the president? Was he even a shooter?
In all probability, he had nothing to do with it. He certainly never fired the shots. He passed a paraffin test, he passed lie detector tests posthumously. There's no way, he had no motive, he had no desire to kill the president. People that knew him say that he had admired President Kennedy. There's no reason to believe that he did do it. He was murdered in the Dallas police station just 2 days after the assassination, so there couldn't be a trial. That was no accident.
You currently have a DVD out on the assassination. Can you tell us where to get it, where we can find it?
I have a DVD, well actually I have 2 DVDs. One is called The Killing of a President, the other one's called The Assassination Films. And they're available through my website, which is jfkmurder.com. And there's also a current magazine, and I have a brand new book coming out in a matter of hopefully just weeks, called JFK Absolute Proof, that has 1,100 photographs in it.
Always fascinating to listen to you. You know, all the research you've done over the last 5 decades, and I appreciate that.
It's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
This is the former Texas School Book Depository, which today is known as the 6th Floor Museum, where it's alleged that on November 22nd, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, fired 3 shots from a window on the 6th floor, which killed the president. I want to find out if that's true. Come on. Well, here we are in the 6th floor of the former School Book Depository, today known as the 6th Floor Museum, with the curator, Gary Mack. Thanks so much for joining us. So where did the shots come from? Did they come from the picket fence on the grassy knoll, or was it here on the 6th floor of the book depository?
Every investigation concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald, in that window just a few feet over there, fired the shots that killed President Kennedy. The medical evidence supports only a shot from behind. One shot hit Kennedy in the back and went through him and hit Texas Governor Connally sitting in front of him. One shot missed completely, and the third shot hit President Kennedy in the head. Here's the problem. Many of the people who were out in Dealey Plaza at that time and closest to the car during the shooting thought that at least one of the shots might have come from in front, the area now known as the grassy knoll. One of the reporters coined that phrase and used it back then. The grassy knoll area is where the cops first ran. And there's a parking lot behind a fence there, and some railroad workers were on a bridge over Elm Street, and they all ran over there. They all swarmed through the parking lot, found no one. No one. You can't have a shot if there's no one there. So the search then shifted over to the book depository. Here's the problem all these years later. The ending, when local nightclub owner Jack Ruby shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald, is a most unsatisfactory closing of the assassination story. I mean, I remember watching it as a senior in high school in Denver, and it just looks so suspicious, so phony. But the reality is all of the evidence says there were two independent people, Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby. And in fact, Jack Ruby, in the months following his killing of Lee Harvey Oswald, received several thousand letters and telegrams thanking him. He was considered a hero by most people.
So let me play devil's advocate with you. The police were inside of this building 90 seconds after the president had been shot.
Right, one of them was, just one.
Just one. But they find Oswald in the second floor cafeteria,
Right.
completely calm, just
Yes.
sitting there.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like a guy who just ran downstairs from the sixth floor out of breath that shot the president of the United States. The best actors in the world can't do that.
Well, that depends. When you talk to investigators, the cops and reporters who work in the crime area, you know, some people are cool, calm, and detached completely. Lee Harvey Oswald had less than 90 seconds to get from that window down the stairs to the second floor lunchroom. That's a distance of less than 200 feet. I just turned 65 this summer. I can do it. If a 23-year-old man can't, then there's something seriously wrong. He was not out of breath. He acted surprised. He wasn't sitting, he was standing. He was actually walking toward a soft drink machine when he was stopped. And, you know, the cop ran up with the building's supervisor, and he identified Oswald and said, well, he's okay, he works here. So the cop left. Oswald then continued toward the soft drink machine, got a soft drink, apparently a Coke, and went downstairs past another co-worker who noticed him with his soft drink and out the front door, caught a bus that came right back to the scene of the crime, but the traffic was jammed, so he got off the bus and took a cab back to his rooming house. But he did a very strange thing. He asked the cab driver to go several blocks past his rooming house. Now, why would an innocent person do that? Well, perhaps to see if the cops had arrived there yet.
Maybe it's just because he thought that he was a patsy and those that had committed this big conspiracy were just going to find him and kill him.
Well, look at it this way. He walked off the job. Now, here's a guy with a minimum wage job that he knew would end in a few days anyway. He didn't ask his boss or any of his coworkers, what's going on out here? You know, the sirens are all blaring and the lights are flashing and all. He didn't do any of that. Anyone would be at least curious, hey, I was inside, what just happened out here? He didn't do that. He didn't talk to anyone. Innocent people don't do that, and there are a string of things that an innocent person would not do that Oswald did. He went to a movie. You know, everybody else, once they heard the news about President Kennedy, went to their television or radio. People weren't hanging out on the street. He went to go see a movie. This is a guy who was politically aware about U.S. policy toward Cuba and Central America. This was a guy who had defected to Russia in 1959. He was a political animal of sorts, and yet he acted as if none of this had ever happened. That is so out of the ordinary that you got to wonder, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here?
You know, if you think about it, Oswald had the perfect shot when the motorcade was coming up Houston Street toward this sixth floor window where Oswald supposedly was. Why would he wait for the motorcade to turn down Elm Street so that he had the president's back?
That would be the easy way to do it. The problem is everybody was looking and facing forward. And he would have noticed that just by watching the traffic going by. They would have seen him right away. The Secret Service would have pulled their guns and shot him. So he waited until they turned the corner and started heading away from the building. And that way, everybody was confused about where the sound was coming from. And by the time they realized, the assassination was over. He thought it through, obviously.
I don't know that we'll ever know, but I think the best evidence has to be the Zapruder film. The camera doesn't lie. What you see on that film is a headshot.
It is. And because of that, when you see him supposedly knocked back and to the left, which was a key moment in the Oliver Stone JFK film, we did a test for the Discovery Channel a few years ago called JFK Inside the Target Car. And we shot a replica skull. And this is a skull that physically matches a real human head. And we did that from the correct distance, the correct angle. We even had the wind correct because we knew the data from the airport just a mile or two away. And we found that when the head exploded and matter came out the front, it matched the Zapruder film perfectly.
Now, there was a Dallas police motorcycle officer who apparently his microphone had been depressed, and they picked up an audio sound which contained 6 to 7 gunshots throughout Dealey Plaza. What about that?
Well, I'm the one who's actually started that theory, and I followed it all these years. There are as many as 7 noises on there. In 1978, Congress put together a committee to investigate the assassination. They actually fired test shots here in Dealey Plaza and recorded them using microphones up and down Houston Street and Elm Street to get an accurate sound pattern so they could identify what was on the recording inadvertently made by a Dallas police officer. And where the blips matched, those were shots, and there were 4. And of the 4, the 3rd came from the grassy knoll. The other 3 came from the book depository window. 2 or 3 years later, a follow-up study found that the blips are not shots at all, but are extraneous noises that happened a minute after the assassination had already ended. There's a long, involved story behind it, and no one's been able to shake that since. But one of the questions that has arisen is the quote-unquote original recording really the original, or is it a dub, a copy? Personally, I think it's a copy, but I can't prove it. I'm not a scientist, and there are differing opinions about that recording.
You know, Gary, I've seen you on so many documentaries, and if you go back 20, 25 years ago, at that time, you believed there was more than one shooter, and it was a conspiracy, and yet when we had breakfast in Phoenix just a year ago, it kind of surprised me you had changed your mind and had come to the conclusion there was one shooter, and that shooter was Lee Harvey Oswald.
If I had spent the last 20 or 30 years of my life and not having learned a damn thing, I'd be pretty embarrassed. I've learned an awful lot about this subject. And one of the things I've learned is that most, if not all, of the conspiracy books don't tell you everything you need to know. They just tell the side that they want you to believe. They don't tell you the other side. And it's very frustrating for me because I just want to know what happened. That's what this museum is about. What happened? We don't care about theories. We don't do my theories. I have my own theories, and other employees here have theories. We leave them at the house.
When did the school book depository first become the 6th floor museum?
Well, the assassination happened in 1963. We opened in February of 1989. I was a consultant in the early days, and I came here full time in 1994 as first archivist and then curator. We've had about 8 million visitors so far. Our obligation is to history and preservation. We've preserved and acquired virtually all of the known local news coverage from the television and radio stations. We have maybe, like 250, 300 hours of material. And in a lot of cases, those are original interviews from people who either never spoke before or were questioned months or years later. So we have all that original material. We've made preservation copies. It's available for people to come here and study. So we're dedicated to the history. Let the theories take care of themselves.
I know that this will continue to be one of the great mysteries, but what a place to visit for those that have any questions at all here in the 6th floor museum.
Yeah, I enjoy speaking about the assassination and helping people understand. I mean, that makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And,
Do I make you feel warm and fuzzy, Gary?
Apparently so, Robert.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. 2 completely opposing points of view. Robert Groden said it's from The grassy knoll behind the picket fence. Gary Mack says, Oswald acting alone, 6th floor window. What do you think? You know, years ago, I learned that as a film actor, the camera does not lie. It tells the truth. So all you need to do is watch the Zapruder film. See what you think, what you come away with.